Guys, my first fly tying video. This is a Hendrickson nymph that I came up with. You know, I ear nymph a lot, and as I was looking online, you know, I'm not from the East. I cut my teeth fly fishing in the West, learned mainly in Idaho and Utah, and that's where I spent most of my time. And coming into the East Coast was definitely a learning experience for me, in just like entomology, different styles, different things. And I wanted to continue Euro nymphing, and one of those things that I found is there's not a lot of imitative patterns for East Coast bugs, specifically Euro nymphs, for Hendricksons. So I came up with this. I just kind of basically took a mishmash of Hendrickson nymphs that I saw and created something. So I have a Hanak 400 in the vise with a 3.5 millimeter gold bead. I have some wood duck, and I'm tying this fly with Rusty Brown UTC 70. But the tail is pretty thick on these. Normally with my Euro bugs, I use Coq de Leon, but I wanted the variegated look, and also I wanted a bushier thing. So I don't want it too long though, so I'm just going to tie it in about that long, maybe a length of the body, maybe even a little bit shorter, and I'll just give it a couple wraps, not much, because I like to keep my flies thin. Gonna cut that short, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna tie in some small copper wire. I'm gonna bring that tail so make sure it's on top of the hook. I'm gonna bring that up in one go, just so it stays thin to win, as who I consider, who I learned most about fly fishing from, Lance, who I was able to work with for quite a little while at Fly Fish Food. So I'm using two different dubbings on this. First one is Snowshoe Rabbits Foot dubbing. I prefer the Rabbit's Foot versus the Hare's Mask, purely because it's a little bit spikier. It doesn't have any antron in it, which allows you to, it's just a little bit more natural, but it's also a little bit more red, and which you see in some of the nymphs in this area. Now, I am going to try to make my dubbing noodle as thin as possible, just because, again, although Hendricksons are bigger flies, and this is a size 12, I don't know if I mentioned that. I maybe might have called it a 14, because that's what I've been tying earlier. So I'm actually gonna wrap it fairly thin and push that up, just get that going along the hook. And if we have those little guard hairs sticking out, that's just fine. And I am going to try to end right about there. And actually what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pull down the dubbing. I'm not even gonna take it off. I can go back and tighten that up. But what I'm gonna do is I have some light squirrel dubbing, and I don't even know the color of this. I bought it a long time ago, and I just have it, and there is some antron mixed into here, but a lot of Hendricksons have those varied bodies. So again, I'm going to try to make a really thin dubbing noodle, and I'm going to push it right up against that that rabbit dubbing, and there we go. I'm going to try to maybe even bring it down a little bit, and that seems like it's going to be about good. I'm going to push that up, and I'm going to finish close behind the bead, and then I'm going to bring the copper wire up. And it doesn't need to be pretty. This is just to help it with some durability. Cross 1, 2, cross, 1, 2. And you can helicopter that out. Now, and I'm going to cut off these guard hairs. Now, what a lot of Hendricksons have is a pretty dark wing case, and I want to reflect that. So I have UTC Flashback in size large, and I'm going to tie that down, and their thoraxes are fairly pronounced. I took a lot, when I was designing this fly, I took a lot of time looking at the naturals, trying to figure out, you know, exactly what I want, how I wanted it to look. So I'm actually going to tie down on top of the dubbing, and then I'm going to add a little bit more of the rabbit's foot. Again, the squirrel is really just for the middle of the abdomen there. But tighten that. Again, I really want a thin dubbing noodle, so that's what I'm going for here. I'm going to go up, and you see I still have some dubbing on the thread, and that's just fine. I'm actually going to tie off the wing case up here and get that situated. Again, it doesn't need to be massive, but I'm going to make one wrap, and then I'm going to pull away the rest of the dubbing. It's just fine. And I'm going to finish, and I can cut that off. It doesn't need to be super pronounced. Again, it just needs to be there so they can, you know, see, oh, you know, hey, this is just something to give them maybe like a little, instead of a hot spot, a dark spot to look at. Again, cutting away some guard hairs there. Now, the last thing is, Hendricksons have pretty pronounced legs, and so I'm going to use the same wood duck. And my initial designs were using, like, you know, three or four fibers is all, but I'm realizing that that's maybe not the best design, and that maybe I should go a little bit heavier with the fiber count. So I have maybe 6 in here, and what I'm looking for is really just the length of the body. Again, I align the tips. I'm gonna look at the length of the body. I'm just gonna hold it against it and make one and two wraps. That's just fine. I'm gonna leave that top there. I'm gonna grab a little bit more of the feather again. I have, if I actually count, it looks like I have 6 or 7 fibers, and that's just fine. I'm gonna try to align the tips, pull that off, and you can see the feather has like an underside and a top side, so I want the top side out. So, and then I just put it against that, hold it. Excuse me, I want to gather this together a little bit more. And then I'm gonna add 2 more. Those aren't necessarily where I want them to be. I'm gonna bring them down just a little. Okay, there we go. It's much better. Now, what I'm actually gonna do is, the fly's done. Make sure that little piece of dubbing's off. I'm going to add a little bit of super glue. I find that my flies last a lot longer, and also I kind of want to just make sure these legs don't fall out. And so what I'm going to do is just paint my thread with that super glue, and what I'm going to do is actually fold these legs back and tie down, and that's gonna make sure that those legs don't come out. It doesn't need to be the cleanest cut, because it's, you know, Hendricksons by nature are not the cleanest of a mayfly. And then you just whip finish, and because that, you know, that super glue is in there, it should be able to bond to it. You don't need many whip finishes. And so you see there, and you know, I really like this nymph purely because it has all that variation, that color variation in the body, and it has those legs. It's not the fastest sinking fly because of all the dubbing and, you know, the legs and everything. So really, if you're looking for a faster sinking fly, I would either add more weight, add some lead underneath, or maybe get rid of the legs. Try maybe adding a holographic body, something more Paragoni-ish. But yeah.